What's going on, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. I'm getting interviewed once again by Jack. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
So Jack's got a little project for school, yeah, we're going to try to debunk some, I guess, some fitness and training myths. And basically, the whole project's about trying to stop the spread of misinformation. Did I kind of get that right?
Yep,
Um,
that's it. That's exactly it.
yeah, it's going to be all about kind of strength, fitness related stuff. So I'm just going to kind of turn it over to Jack and then we'll just start the conversation.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I just want to say that. And let's just get right started, like right into it. So my first question is just how bad is the misinformation and false advertising in the fitness industry when it comes to supplements and programs?
Sure. So I think overall, I think the information is more abundant than ever. But I also think for as much kind of misinformation, as much kind of poor information that's out there, I think there's probably a lot more good information, but sometimes I think it's I'm not like a psychology expert or anything like that, but I think it's human nature for us to kind of recognize like the threats. It's human nature to recognize kind of the stuff that is maybe wrong or threatening or maybe just something that kind of goes against our beliefs. When I first started training, was I was about your age and uh, started getting really serious around like ninth, 10th grade in high school, and there wasn't as much information readily available on the internet. Um, so it was a little bit harder to kind of find stuff, but especially like in a lot of the magazines and stuff like that, and definitely before my time, a lot of the ads and things like that, a lot of like kind of like the bodybuilding magazines and stuff, I would say there's a lot of misinformation in those, especially where if people kind of dug a little bit deeper, there was a lot of like ghost writers and stuff like that. So someone might say like so and so Mr. Olympia or so and so top bodybuilder, and it was actually a ghostwriter writing the routine, and it wasn't even something they followed. You see this a lot with supplements, whereas someone may say, "I take XYZ protein" or "I take this type of powder," but meanwhile, maybe they only took it one time, maybe they don't take it at all, or maybe there's it. It really didn't do anything in terms of the results. It was maybe it was the nutrition, it was the training plan. In terms of so I think with supplements, it's always I think claims are usually over exaggerated. When I was in high school, um, there was a NO Explode was really popular, which is basically a creatine product, and obviously creatine's got a lot of research behind it. But it
Right.
claimed that you would like gain 10 pounds in 4 weeks, or to some outrageous claim, and you might have actually seen that, but most of it was water weight. It wasn't actual muscle, but people would see like that their scale weight would increase and they would kind of equate that to muscle, and they would feel the caffeine in the product because it was so like you would get that feeling of like I'm getting stronger, I'm getting pumps,
Right. Right.
but it wasn't necessarily what the product wasn't really doing what it was advertised to do. So I think especially in the supplement space, it's still claims are either exaggerated or they're just downright false, and that can be really tough. But I think also it's also human nature to try to find a quick fix, an easy solution, because people
100%. Yeah.
they want to get the result like now. And now more
Yeah.
than ever with social media, we're so like used to getting like an answer very quickly. We're used to getting instant gratification. We're used to being entertained like constantly. So I think that that's where people need to be careful about like when they're reading something or they're engaging with a post or getting information, that they also look at it with a critical lens and kind of see like is there evidence to back these claims. So a good kind of rule of thumb, if it's a bigger claim, the bigger the claim, the more outrageous the claim, there should be more evidence behind it. If it's more kind of modest claim, and there's kind of a proven track record, or if there is a body of evidence, and evidence could be anecdote, it could be your personal experience, and evidence could be research. In terms of programming, I've kind of found that this is a little bit trickier because if you know a lot about muscle physiology and how the body responds to training and stuff, a very basic stimulus that's not that maybe targeted can still like work well. I'm sure you're still young, but I'm sure like when you first started lifting, you didn't really know what you were doing as much as you understand now, but you still saw improvements, you still saw weight on the bar, but there was a certain
Of
point.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
but there was a certain point where like, okay, like now things started to slow down, right? So the
Yeah.
further along you are, you have to be more meticulous and kind of be a little bit more, and that's just kind of understanding how a stimulus and an adaptation and the recovery process works. But the more advanced you have to be more meticulous with what the stimulus is, make it more specific. So with programs, I think it's definitely gotten better, but I think that there's two sides to the programming thing. Same thing. I think a lot of people will kind of like inflate over, like exaggerate like the gains from the program. So for example, in like a powerlifting program, if someone is like has really poor technique and they improve their technique a lot and they're on like a program with sound principles, they may add, 50 to 100 pounds on a lift. Did they get 50 to 100 pounds stronger, or did their technique get better? So sometimes those things are hard to kind of differentiate. Um,
Right.
and that's where so like the claim may be true, but can we actually prove, was it the program that enlisted that dictated the result, or was it the improvement of form? Was it just that they practiced more? Was it that they had belief in themselves? Because there's that placebo effect. So programs are definitely a little bit more tricky, in my opinion, to kind of figure out like what's good with and what's bad and like what's misinformation. But again, similar to the supplements, a lot of times the claims are like exaggerated or the amount of progress is exaggerated. So I know even with our like I try not to say when people say like how long is it going to take, I try to like not worry about that. If you have fun sound principles and it's a good program and you're kind of improving your technique, then a lot of programs can actually work. But it's more about like kind of figuring out what's going to kind of work to the individual. So if someone is making a very big claim in terms of a supplement or a program and they say this is if they say this is the answer for everyone and this is the best way, if it's like very overly exaggerated or if it's for everybody, that's where I would kind of raise an eyebrow. So I think it's good for people to understand that there's a bell curve kind of idea, whereas there's going to be some people that are very gifted and they can respond well to a lot of different things. There's people that maybe aren't so gifted and they're going to really need to be very precise. And then most of us kind of live somewhere in between where it's going to take us, an average amount of time to kind of get, an average result. Um, so, looking at the averages of like what was the average increase in someone's, progress on this program, what was the average weight gain on this supplement, as opposed to like these crazy like results like this person, added 200 pounds to their bench in 6 months, so I think that's where people kind of get caught up a little bit with the misinformation. If the claim is really outrageous, that's where I would kind of take a step back. And as far as like how prevalent it is, if anytime money is involved, if people are selling something, and myself included, again, I tend to like really try to coach people reasonably and for a long period of time. But if someone's trying to make a quick dollar, if someone's trying to like sell like a program to like a large amount of people, if they're trying to sell a supplement to a large amount of people, that's where usually the bigger the audience, the bigger that the like the company potentially involved, things tend to get like watered down and probably I would say more misinformation or more marketing and things like that. But I would say for as much bad as out there, I think there's a lot of good. I think the hard thing is learning to kind of filter through and kind of figure out what's good and what's bad. So I know that's like a lot of information, but I think that in general, I think there's more good information out there than bad, but sometimes it's human nature to kind of focus on like the crazy stuff. And also the way like all these algorithms and these apps, people, if there's something's kind of inflammatory or so, it's going to elicit a reaction and an emotional response, that's going to get shown more because people are going to watch it more, and that's going to get people kind of riled up and talking about it. Um,
Right.
it's also more human nature to unfortunately give a bad review like on a restaurant versus if they had like a decent meal, they probably won't like rate it or they probably won't like talk about it. But if they had a bad experience, like there was a hair in their food, there was a sharp bone in their fish or something, then someone's going to complain and they're going to be a little bit louder about that. So um, that's kind of like just understanding human nature. But I do think that most people are trying to do right by people. I don't think most people are trying to um, kind of fool people or, obviously there are people out there. But I think it's important to just sometimes take a step back and kind of just look at like the bigger picture. So
Yeah.
I think there's more information out there in general, both good and bad. And is it any more? I think sometimes people, if it's bad information, I think people also get exposed faster because the internet is so fast. So that's kind of like a benefit of the internet. So there's good and bad to it. But so I would say that there's probably more of everything, and I'm not sure if it's just, but we're also aware. We see, we probably are more exposed to like, you know, the misinformation more often because of technology, because of social media, and the access to the information.
Yeah, no, obviously you can't see me, but I've been shaking my head pretty much the whole time. I definitely agree with all of that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Sorry for screaming, but my dogs are in the background barking.
It's all good.
They're playing right now. The dog is crazy. We got a new one, so she's insane. But yeah, but that all makes a lot of sense. I think there is a lot more information now than there used to be, and just in general. And I think it is definitely human nature to migrate towards the bad things instead of focusing on the good things. So that leads me to my next question, which you kind of answered a little bit. What are some signs that consumers should look out for to identify misinformation in products?
Sure. And these are hard, but I would say like, again, going back to like, if it's a big claim, they better have a lot of evidence. So I think that, when you're trying to purchase something from somebody, a service, a product, I think it's good to look at their track record, look at the reviews. And again, sometimes if it's like an internet kind of based things, are those reviews real? Are those reviews fake? So
Right. Yeah.
it gets kind of crazy because you have some of these big companies, they have bots, or they might have fans, and um, if it's something like, that's why I think long form content, like, we're doing a podcast right now and stuff like that. We're on Zoom, having longer conversations. I think you can kind of get to know a person or the company or the product a little bit more. Um, so I think anytime you could do things like live or do things in an extended format, I think that's very helpful. So if you are looking to buy a product from somebody, if you're looking to buy a service from somebody, maybe there's a longer clinic, maybe they have a podcast, maybe they have some sort of in-person seminar where you're getting a little bit more time with that person that you're looking to buy from. And I think that you can learn a lot, the longer you kind of spend time with that product or service or the company that's providing it. So if they've been doing it for like a long time and they have a lot of positive reviews, um, I think kind of hearing, like, again, an anecdote's important. If someone's been on a training program, so like with our gym, for example, we've helped over 100 lifters, achieve national ranking over the years, top 50 in their weight class and division. So over time, we've had repeatable results. So if a product just came out, they may not have a track record yet, so maybe you don't want to write them off right away. But it's a little bit unknown when something's starting out. When I was starting out training people, so I just, I started to kind of getting experience, but then over time, I actually, worked with a bunch of wrestlers initially, and those wrestlers, they went from JV to varsity. They went from varsity to all county. Some made all state. Some went to college. So like once we started to get some results, and people could see, it's like, oh, why is Nick and Anthony kicking those kids' butts? Well, I hear they're training at GaglioneStrength, and then you start to kind of get these testimonials. So looking for testimonials, looking for reviews, I think is important. Um, how long the company has been in business for, um, and if they do make big claims, is there any evidence to support those claims? So if it's a supplement, was there any research done on these supplements? Um, what are other experts say about about these the dosages of like what's in the supplement, that sort of thing. If it's a training program, is the training program like kind of based off science? Is it based off experience? Like again, all the programs that we do, I've been competing in powerlifting since 2006. I've had some of my best years competing were my last 2 years, which is pretty cool. So I've been able to kind of repeat, and I kind of run through the same program that our team does. So if the person selling the product walks the walk, if they take their own product, I think those are all kind of good signs. But that being said, also if someone's really popular, or if someone is popular is another thing. Just because someone's popular doesn't mean it's good. And just because someone has a few bad reviews, maybe if you've been in business long enough, or you're gonna have some people that just didn't have a great experience. But what does the majority of the evidence say? What does the majority of the customer reviews say? Um, and ultimately, is there any kind of way that is there any sort of like kind of trial period, or so I think the more information you can kind of get on the front end is good. Kind of do your homework, do your due diligence. And if something kind of seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
If someone's kind of reasonable and they say like, hey man, I can't guarantee this for you, but this is like what we've kind of seen over time I like to say like on average, or I like to say in my experience, because if it's my experience, I'm not guaranteeing it, because everyone is different. If
Right.
someone guarantees 100%, I know it's going to work for you 100% of the time. There's very few things in life that are guaranteed. So those are things that I would kind of be a little bit skeptical of. Um, so if the claims are like really outrageous, or if they say like always or never, um, nothing is guaranteed in this life. So those are things I would kind of raise an eyebrow. Now you could say like, we have an overwhelmingly body, most of this is a typical result. So I would kind of, depending on what language they're using, if something is very like if they have like a secret thing, and sometimes I'll use that kind of language just so people kind of click, and I'll admit it, but it's really rare there's like a true secret or a true magic pill, or there's one simple trick, or a lot of these are marketing kind of tactics, or like never do this, or this is wrong and this is right. Most things are gray, most things are kind of in the middle. So if you kind of get to know the product, the service, if things are kind of more like even keel and the team is more reasonable, there's probably a higher percentage chance that it's going to be a truthful product, and it's going to do what it says it does. So that's what I would say to that.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I completely agree with that. Like I said earlier, I was talking with somebody yesterday. His name is Justin Hall. He's been in the industry for probably like 20 something years, right? He's been lifting his whole life. And he was saying a lot of the same things, where he was like, if they're making like outrageous claims and they're like always and never, it's probably not true, because everything is gray and it's different for everybody. It's not just black and white. It's not like either it works or it doesn't work. It's gonna work, but it might work better for somebody and worse for somebody else. So I
Absolutely.
definitely agree with that. That's a lot of insight, and that does make a lot of sense. Can you provide some specific examples of supplements or products that have been heavily marketed with false information, and what would you substitute these with?
Oh man. Um, I'm trying to think of. I try to like. I'm always training myself to be more positive, so I'm sure
Right.
there's plenty of things. Like some of those products I mentioned, I would say like any one thing that like really I guess kind of upsets me, and this is just broadly in general, like especially when like the listeners may not know. I'm not sure how much you remember to this or not, or how much I talked to you. I know I talked to your parents a little bit about this, but I've been severely overweight for most of my life. I was 340 pounds. I've lost about over 100 pounds and kept it off. So especially when you see a lot of these before and after pictures, or you see a lot of these claims of like, lose 20 pounds like fast, so like
Yeah, the fat burners.
biggest, yeah, things like fat burners and things like that. Even something like The Biggest Loser. If you There was like a study done on The Biggest Loser contestants, and then a lot of them gained all the weight back and then some, but we don't see like the aftermath. So a lot of times anything that's like easy come, if it's easy come, it's probably easy go. And that goes for strength, that goes for weight loss, that goes for weight gain.
Yeah.
If you can slowly make progress for a long period of time, that's going to be more sustainable, both mentally, but also your body's going to hold on to it. Your body doesn't really want to change. If you've taken biology, you understand the idea of homeostasis. So if there's a radical change, so like if like a weight gainer promises you're going to put on 10 pounds in a month, you might put on 10 pounds of water weight. You're going to force feed yourself. But then when you stop taking the weight gainer, I don't want to get into like, well, I'll just throw it out there because I don't really know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert in this. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. So I'm just kind of using this. So right now, what's really and I don't have experience with this, and I don't know people on it, but what's really popular in the news right now is this drug called Ozempic, semaglutide.
Yes, yes.
So, and I've heard mixed reviews of it, but one of the things that's it's very alarming to me as someone who's lost a lot of weight is number one, what the drug does is that it basically blunts your appetite. Okay, so which can be good or bad, especially if someone has uncontrollable hunger. So, but what it does, what it's not going to do for you, it's not going to make you exercise. It's not going to make you strength train. It's not going to change your diet habits. So it'll make you eat less. But if you're still eating less of junk, especially if you're not getting enough protein, you're going to lose a lot of muscle. And people are just so fixated on, so they're going to lose weight, but they actually may be end up. Now, if someone has a lot of weight to lose, and that's their biggest concern, they're 500 pounds, they're maybe they're a diabetic or something that, but for someone that just wants a quick weight loss, and like some of these celebrities are going on this drug, they might be losing a lot of muscle. They may end up being, more unhealthy. And then when they get off the drug and their appetite is normal, they haven't like developed the habits necessary to kind of maintain their body weight. And, potentially, and if maybe they lost muscle mass and then they go off the drug, and now they're fatter and lost muscle because now they're eating like the junk again. So
Right.
something like that is very alarming to me. And again, it's like any drug, find a good doctor, use it wisely. If you're going to take a pill, you also need to, or a supplement. It's called a supplement for a reason. You still need to get your diet, lifestyle, and your training in order. And if you're not doing those things, and that's a lot of these ads won't tell you that. A lot of these protein powder ads, these pre-workouts, these powders, and again, they can have their place. But the truth is, most people like you gotta eat, more whole foods. You got to eat better. You got to train smarter. You got to train more frequently. You got to do some cardio and some resistance training. So that's where like, and then on the powerlifting end, and I'm kind of speaking to you a little bit and people in your age demographic. One of the things that I'm very cautious of. So what's really popular and what works really well is high frequency training. So squatting, benching, deadlifting with a barbell multiple times a week for, weeks on end. And the problem with that style of training long term, like any type of activity that you do long term repeatedly, you can get a lot more overuse injuries than other training modalities that spread out the training or have more variety in the training over the course of a year. If someone's a baseball player and they never take a season off, a lot of times they get a Tommy John surgery or a rotator cuff surgery because they never get to rest. They're always repeating that pattern. Runners.
Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. I played baseball my whole life, and I did a second sport as well, and I did diving most of the time for around 3 years. And I tore my rotator cuff and my labrum from overusage because I would throw my arms for flips and I would throw a baseball, and it was terrible. So I totally understand what you mean when you say that.
So yeah, in terms of things, I forgot what the original question was, but I'll kind of get back to. So in terms of like, so what could you do instead? Okay, so instead of taking a fat burner or like a weight loss drug, the first thing that you should do is assess your diet and lifestyle, which is not, so eat more protein, assess your sleep, assess your hydration levels. Are you getting enough whole foods in to kind of hit your micronutrient needs? Understanding calories, understanding your activity level, and participating in a weight training, resistance training program. So that way, because if you increase your muscle mass, you're going to burn more calories at rest. So that's where someone should start. And then if they're still like having trouble, that sort of thing. Now, again, there are some situations, but again, that fat burner or the weight loss drug, that is like, again, the icing on the cake. You still need to get the other stuff in order. And in terms of a strength training program, I think the first thing that people, whether any type of program that you're doing, I think more people need to like just focus on the skill of all the different movements first. So if you want to be a bodybuilder, you got to learn how to contract all the different muscle groups and how to pose. If you're a power lifter, you got to learn how to bench, squat, and deadlift effectively for your body type before you start to load. So start to kind of focus on the skill first, which again takes more time. But in general, like I said, easy come, easy go. But if you take your time and you learn the basics and kind of really master the fundamentals. I always say you want to be brilliant at the basics, and you want to do simple things savagely well. And over time, if you're consistent, you need to put in a lot of effort, but you also need to be very consistent. But people want the quick fix. So that's why they want to take the weight loss drug. They want to do the high frequency training for powerlifting because they want the PRs yesterday. But if you take your time and you just focus on the process, um, whether it be, the supplement or the programs, doing like the little things, doing the basics, the fundamentals really well, and doing that consistently for a long period of time. If I told you I was going to sell you a program, but it's going to take you 10 years, it's just not that, it's not that like, oh man, that's like a long time. But, um, you know, anything great is going to take a long time. So I think that's kind of the biggest, no one really talks about that as far as like in an advertisement or like that sort of thing. No one's going to be like, well, this protein powder may give you like 1% gains. It's just, but that's the truth.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
and if it's a weight loss drug, they're not going to talk to you about all the potential side effects or the cons. They're just going to you're not going to want to eat. You're going to lose all this weight, but they're not going to talk about the muscle wasting. They're not going to talk about people feel really nauseous on like those drugs, and they could have complications with that. What happens when you come off it? Like those conversations are not had. So it's really important to kind of, look at the cost and the benefit to all these different things. And there might be a time and a place for a short period. So high frequency training, for example, maybe for a season. If you're a diabetic and you're like really obese, maybe for a season, yeah, but make sure you're not only taking the weight loss drug, you're also focusing
Right.
on the other stuff as well. So maybe for a season under the supervision of a doctor, it might be totally fine, but make sure you're not just taking the magic pill and then
And relying on it.
relying on it, and then potentially you're kind of in a worse situation than when you started. So
Right. Yeah.
that's always my
Um,
fear with that.
yeah, no. I totally agree. I think that's great. So the specific supplements or products that you recommend staying away from is fat burners in short.
Yeah, well, I would say certainly anything that is going to potentially affect your hormones, potentially affect your heart. So things that are like really high, and a lot of times, fat burners can be like also like can change your heart rate and things like that. So you got to be
Yeah.
careful anything that's going to like adjust your heart rate. Obviously, especially for younger kids, things that could potentially affect your hormones you got to be careful with things like, because sometimes people think that, oh, I'm going to go in the vitamin shop and I'm going to get these pro hormones, but those things can mess you up and they might like mess up your natural testosterone production, things like that. Um,
Yeah.
any,
Yeah.
anything extreme is not going to, so anything extreme either way. So extreme weight loss, extreme weight gain, extreme training practices, um, so you got to be careful with all those things. So yeah, but certainly fat burners are like a big one. Um, yeah, and in terms of like, I would say in terms of training programs and things like that, I would just say that you don't want to be, especially for younger lifters, younger athletes, you don't want to be too specialized too soon. That goes for sports, that goes for training. So if you play baseball, maybe take up another sport. If you're a football player, maybe you wrestle. If you're a soccer player, maybe play lacrosse in the spring. um, be a little bit more well-rounded. So that way, when you're
Right.
older, you also have more skills and you're not always doing the same thing over and over again. Now, if once, let's say like baseball is your favorite, or if you really love powerlifting, you could always do a little bit all the time, but just make sure you have seasons where you do less and you have seasons where you do more. Uh,
Of
right now,
course. Yeah.
right now, I'm just focusing more on losing weight. So I'm doing more bodybuilding training and I'm doing less powerlifting because I just want to heal up and I'm not focused on maximal strength right now. If I sign up for a meet, so like last month I did a curl competition. I curled 3 times a week, uh, which I don't recommend you do all the time, but that was for a specific result and it worked really well. But if I curled 3 times a week all the time, my elbows would probably fall. It probably wouldn't feel too good, like if I did it
Yeah.
long enough. But I only did it for a 6 week period and it worked really well. But also, if you do something extreme in one area, other areas should also start to drop off. So I wasn't doing a lot of squatting, benching, and deadlifting there at the time because I was focused on this very specific thing. So, um, it,
Right.
so I think that, so just understand that all these things could potentially. That's why it's not really with misinformation, all this stuff. It's good to view things as a spectrum. So some of these things can be tools. Some things are just outright bad, but other times it's also like you need to use the right tool for the right job when the time is right, when you actually have a job that warrants taking out that tool. If you are
Right.
if you're someone that just wants to get a six pack, um, taking a weight loss drug is probably like not it's not meant for you. It's not if someone's like obese and it's a life threatening thing, maybe that weight loss drug is worth considering because again the cost and the benefit. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so if you have a powerlifting meet coming up, well, maybe, yeah, maybe squat and bench deadlift a little bit more frequently, and because you gotta practice those movements, you gotta be proficient in those movements. But then after the meet, maybe you stay away from the barbell a little bit and you do more body weight training, more machine stuff that's going to be let your joints recover. And then when you have another meet coming up, then you start to do a little bit more. So it's just you do things in cycles. Um, and it's a little bit more challenging to kind of think about it that way, but that's a really good way to kind of, start to assess like a good question to ask yourself is how does it help? How does it hurt?
Right.
Kind of can answer those questions. You could start to decipher if it's a good decision for you or not.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. This is kind of branching off the same question. Do you know what V-shred is?
Yes, I'm very familiar with V-Strat. Well, I'm
All right.
fairly familiar with V-Strat. Yeah.
All right, cool. Because that's the first thing that comes to mind when I get asked this question is V-Shred, because I see his videos all the time, and it's just
Yeah.
like
He's a
he's
great
he's
marketer.
like swinging with a box of donuts, and he's like, "Look at my abs. You can do the same thing while eating donuts in 30 days." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's just
Yeah.
not."
Yeah. Um, so do you want my opinion on it or do you have a question or?
No, I was just gonna ask like if you knew like what that was, and if you were like,
Yeah,
if
so
you had an opinion.
I've never like taken his stuff too seriously, but his ads do pop up. So number one, what can we learn from someone like a V-Shred? Great marketer, obviously. So he's hitting pain points.
100%, yeah.
So he's kind of tapping into like what are people. So like for me, like I can learn a thing or two from V-Shred, not on his practices, but like how he's presenting a message. So he's hitting a pain point. So a lot of people don't want to sacrifice their favorite foods. Now, how he's presenting it is maybe a little misleading to say the least. Um, but what I will say is I have sometimes here and there watched some stuff just because I like to just kind of see what's going on in the industry and stuff. And I will say probably more information than not is probably pretty, yeah, it's pretty good once you actually kind of, but the hook is and I do have a problem with that because it is misleading for people. So like what he's saying now, if you account for calories, you can have a donut. You could have a portion of a donut. You could have a scoop of ice cream. You could have a little pizza, but that's not like how he's framing it. Is the way people are picturing it is, oh, I could just eat pizza, pasta, and pancakes and lose weight. And that the fact of the matter is that's just utterly not true. So
Yeah.
he's presenting it in a way that's kind of disingenuous, and it is kind of um. So I don't recommend like for me like if he feels like he's got to like do that to kind of get people in the door. And maybe his product is good. I don't really know about his actual training programs and stuff, but some of the information I've seen him. So I would say probably like 80% of what he puts out there is probably decent advice. But what we see are those ads that are just, quite frankly, I think they could be more damaging and it confuses the consumer. And that's what's tough. So then you have someone like me, and I'm telling you, you got to count your steps, eat whole foods, limit, and it's like, well, what are you going to pick? I'm going to eat donuts, not do cardio, and I'm going to get shredded. So that sounds like a better deal.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
that's
100%.
like, that's the tough thing. But I think for people like myself, I try to like, have blinders on and kind of fight the good fight. And my philosophy is just try to spread the good information.
Yeah.
People will, so there's a lighthouse analogy, which I think is very pertinent to this talk. So this is how I think about things. And it's tough. And I'm not saying it's right all the time, but this is when I kind of get distracted by someone like a V-Shred, and not to pick on him because there's plenty of people that um, do the same marketing tactics. So you could be a lighthouse or you could be a tugboat. So the tugboat goes out to shore, from shore, and the tugboat actually physically brings the ships back to shore. Wastes a lot of gasoline. It's a little bit more challenging. Sometimes the ship doesn't listen, right? But the lighthouse stands its ground and it always shines the light. And you always know, and the what the function of the lighthouse is the ships can see the light and they could choose to come to shore or not. So
Right.
what I try to do as an educator in the space is be a lighthouse. I'm not going to like go out of my way to force you or to kind of make someone think a certain way. I'm going to do the best I can to provide the best information I can. If people want to listen to it, that's on them. I'm not going to kind of go out of my way to kind of force someone to think a certain way. I'll provide the opportunity. I will keep shining the light, but I'm also not going to like lose sleep. If someone like wants to try V-shed string, I can't like stop them. So, um, but I've had some people over the years, they kind of get hurt and then they come back, or they tried some new things and they come back, or sometimes they try something else, they like it better, and that's okay too. But for me, I think it's more important to focus on spreading the correct or the positive message, or like have a message that has good intent versus, because there's always going to be the charlatans, there's always going to be those people. So um I think the best thing we can do is explain, like, instead of trying to tear this person down, hey, this is why I think that this evidence, these claims are not backed by evidence, or these claims are a little outrageous. So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more even keeled. When I first started the company in 2011, I would get a little bit more fired up with someone like V Shred. I'd get a little bit more fired up when someone did something that, because I'm passionate about this stuff. But what I've realized is that it's better to focus my attention and my energy into just coaching the people that are here to listen. So the people that are going to find a light and come to me, that's like kind of what I'm going to focus on. So I think that's just something kind of good where, and obviously the reason I'm sure you're doing this project is you also care, and you're passionate about your lifting and your fitness, and
Yep.
you
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
and you see stuff like this, and it kind of, annoys you. It kind of, it kind of fires you up. Um, so I think the best thing that we could do for the people that are informed, or this is a passion for, is say, hey, I know you see this over here, but why don't you try this way? This, I really found this way works. So you come at it like, you kind of, sometimes what do they say? You catch more flies with honey or something. I forget what the saying is, but like you have a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
of a softer approach, right? So you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it is.
Um, so, and here and there, sometimes I do spit a little vinegar. I'm not going to lie, but and I have over the years. But just what I've kind of found, um, I've been doing this a really long time. It's worked really well for me. I've squatted 800 pounds in 6 weight classes. I've totaled elite in 4 weight classes. We've helped over 100 people get national rankings. I know that our program works, so I can get bent out of shape because V Shred's talking about eating donuts and not doing cardio, or I could just keep helping people. So I just choose to keep helping people. So even right now, like I said, I'm in Delaware right now, and I'm not established here. So people don't care that I coach Larry Wheels. People don't care, that they don't know who I am. I'm not established. So
Right.
I have to kind of start over. And I'm constantly telling myself, okay, like, I'm going to keep spreading my message. And then, and sure enough, we're getting people that are like getting on the program down here and stuff. And it's a slow process, but um, again, people are gonna like have their guard up initially, and then once they start to see some results, they'll kind of come around. But what is tough, and I'll kind of leave with I'll stop. I'll end it here. Um, it is tough when you see someone go down like that path and they get hurt, or something like really bad. Like this happens a lot in bodybuilding. A lot of females, a lot of, and males too. They'll go on these crash diets. They kill their hormones. They kill their thyroid, and that's really tough for me to see. So I hate to see stuff like that. But everything we do, there's a risk. So I think it's up to us as the consumer to also be responsible. Like anything we put in our body, anything we put our body through, we got to take responsibility for that. Ultimately, like, I can't force you to do anything. You have to make that decision for yourself. And sometimes you make I've made mistakes. I'm sure, with myself, you learn from them, you kind of move forward, and and hopefully you kind of share those experiences with other people, so they don't make this. That's why I do what I do. And again, I don't know if I had this conversation with you, Jack, but the reason I'm a coach is because I was a failed wrestler. I didn't train the right way. I tore my hamstring my senior year. I wasn't prepared for the sprints that we were doing at football practice. And because I tore my hamstring my senior year, I missed my goal of being an all county wrestler by one match. I lost in the round to place the counties. And if I was healthy, if I had trained properly, I would have achieved my goal, no problem. And that's what drove me crazy to learn all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I turn a positive into a negative, and my hope is that. And listen, some people, and there's always a risk. There's always a risk training. There's always a risk playing a sport, but um, we just do the best we can, just give out the best information. And yeah, as a consumer, it's important more than that because of there's so much information. We have to kind of look at things with a critical lens, and I think it is important to be a little skeptical. And you could still be skeptical and not and you don't have to like be a jerk or be rude or stuff. You could ask questions. If you're not sure, ask why, why,
Right.
why, and if they can't answer you,
Then that's probably not the right thing.
it's probably not the right thing.
Exactly. So how can consumers educate themselves when it comes to evaluating fitness related like claims?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would just kind of piggyback what we just said is like start to dig a little bit deeper, and if it is a coach, if it is a service, if it's a reputable company, they should have customer service. Hey, like how what kind of evidence do you have, or what kind of, and do you have any testimonials, or uh I'm just kind of I'm a 40-year-old housewife. Do you have any clients that are kind of in my demographic? Have you worked with those people before? Um And I'll tell you off the bat, just kind of flipping it back on myself. Sometimes people come to me, they want to do strongman, or they want to do CrossFit, or they want to do weightlifting. And I say, hey, listen, I really specialize in powerlifting and strength. So if you need to get stronger, I can help you kind of get to a point. But then I would kind of recommend, this trainer because they specialize in strongman, or they specialize. So like my nutrition coach, Sean Cody, uh, like I could help someone build more muscle and get leaner, but to prep them for a bodybuilding show the last like 6 to 8 weeks, I would say go see Sean because that's what he does. I can
Right.
help them get
Yeah.
stronger. So like if they're really good at what they do and they're really specialized in one area, they're going to let you know. If they say, "Oh yeah, I could do this," when someone says like I'm a physical therapist, I'm a strength coach, I'm like a nutritionist, I'm like if they could do everything for everyone, they're probably not very good at any one thing. Um,
Right. Yeah.
So ask questions. Be respectful, but ask questions. Do your homework. Do your research. Um, Again, what's cool about now is like with social media and stuff. If they, have they been posting a while? Like, what are their like? Do they walk the walk? Um, look for those things. But I think asking questions is probably the biggest thing.
Right. Yeah, no, no, no. That makes a lot of sense. I think asking questions would definitely benefit people. And I think people tend to just look at reviews and do like the minimal amount of work possible just to get what they're looking for. And then they try it and then they don't like it. And then they're like, oh, what happened? I don't understand. There were all these good reviews. There was all this and that. So I think that would definitely help people out. I have two questions left for you. So, is there any like overall like company that oversees the fitness industry and misinformation? And then what role does social media and influencers play in spreading misinformation?
Well, unfortunately, so there a couple of things. So I believe so unless it's like a food product. So like the FDA will, if something is qualified as a food, the FDA will kind of oversee it. To my knowledge, I know there's really not as many regulations with a lot of the supplement industry, and that's where you got to be careful. There are some bodies that are associated with like collegiate teams and stuff. So like there's things that are like certified safe for sport and stuff. So things that are like anything that's under like WADA, like drug testing or USADA, they might have companies that kind of are that work with them to kind of make sure that there's no banned substances in certain supplements. So if something is like, I want to say it's like safe for sport. I think that's like the terminology they'll use. Um, Third party tested. So those are things to kind of look for supplements. For programs, it's kind of wild, wild west. I'm going to be honest. So, someone should have a credential in the fitness industry. Someone should have CPR and first aid, but there are plenty of coaches, especially like in the powerlifting space. I don't think they have like legitimate businesses. I don't think they have any certifications or credentials. Now, that being said, someone could have credentials and not know a thing about, I see it all the time. We host powerlifting meets, and sometimes a personal trainer will be getting ready an athlete for a powerlifting meet, and they don't even know, like, what is the bar weigh? What's a kilo? What's the order of the lifts? It's always squat, bench, deadlift, and it's in the rule book. So like
Right.
these people are not qualified, which is fine. But if someone's paying you to like do this, like maybe do a little research, buddy, or like,
Yeah.
so that'd be my thing. Like if someone asked me to handle them at a weightlifting meet, I've never done weightlifting, but I do watch the sport. So weightlifting is different than powerlifting because you could follow yourself. So if you didn't know weightlifting rules, you might not know that you could actually take you snatch, then you clean and jerk. You could take all three of your snatch attempts in a row if you're like a light guy, because the bar, it's a rising bar. They do give you an extra rest, but like if I wasn't educated on the sport and I just came from powerlifting, I'm like, sure, I'll coach you for this weightlifting meet. So, anyways, as far as governing bodies, now what's really interesting at the time of this recording, there's been some, I guess I don't know if it's a controversy, whatever, but um, I'm not sure if you follow Mark Bell or not, but like one of his YouTube channels got pulled off YouTube. Uh, like so, Facebook, I believe, owns Instagram and Facebook, and then YouTube. So like they kind of make the rules, and you got to play by their rules. So
Right.
if you kind of break one of their guidelines, but the problem, these platforms are so big. So the problem, I don't know if it's a problem, but and I got to be careful what I say. I could be canceled. But joking aside, so like I'm assuming there are a lot of like either robots or AI, like artificial intelligence, that they're searching for certain keywords or certain things. So like if it's a certain misinformation or certain like kind of words that are like kind of maybe potentially dangerous for people. So if they're promoting something that's like dangerous, like a drug or something, those accounts could be flagged. So there are some things in social media. I haven't really seen it, but so sometimes you'll see if an account gets taken down. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the term like shadow banned, but
Yeah.
they'll start to suppress your content based on these algorithms. So, and I don't really know a lot about it. I just kind of understand some of the principles behind it. So you're kind of playing by their rules. So as a content creator, um, the social media platforms kind of make the rules, and they can kind of choose to uh, you know strike you, warn you, or like now we're seeing people are getting pulled off platforms if they're not kind of abiding by guidelines. So but in terms of like actually training people, like if you're working independently, there's like ways by the book to do it, but it's a pretty unregulated field, and that's why there is a lot of variance in like what's allowed and what's not allowed. But um, it is important to kind of understand like liability and just kind of safety, um, both as a consumer and also the person that's administering the service. So there's not, unfortunately, it's not very regulated, and that's also why you have seen a lot of the misinformation and gimmicky products and services like over the years.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think they should have more regulations on things. I know they do. I know the FDA does do supplements a little bit, but they don't really. They obviously can't check every single tin of creatine, for let's say. So they just regulate like how it's like created, like the assembly line. Like they regulate stuff like that. They don't regulate like certain things in the actual thing.
Yeah, you
And
see,
a lot of things, a lot of problems with creatine and protein powder and stuff like that is a lot of the like ingredients are scientific names, and people are like, well, I don't know what this is. This is like,
right,
what am I supposed to know what this is? It's like a scientific, it's like a big boy word, right? Like, how am I supposed to know what these things mean? And they don't really do the research themselves. They just guess it's okay.
sure,
So it definitely would help if there was a better governing body, but I don't really know how to get that to work. Like I don't really know how I could do anything for that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I was just yeah, that's it. And then I just have a question for you, just because I feel like it kind of makes sense for this project. What do you feel about Natty or not?
oh man, I wasn't expecting that. um Personally, like I think that someone's like medical history and kind of any particular maybe drugs they're taking or not taking, I don't really think it's anyone's business. That being said, if someone is like saying, if someone's competing in like a sport that is tested, or just a sport in general, if you're an athlete that participates in a sport, I think part of being like having good sportsmanship is abiding by all the rules. And
Yeah.
if the rules include uh, not taking X, Y, and Z banned substances, then I think that you should abide by those rules. I don't think if you know compete where if you don't like the rules in a certain federation or for a certain sport, then do a different sport. That's
Right.
I
Yeah.
that now I think people calling each other out on whether it be natty or not, or just in general, I think again, I'll kind of expand the circle out a little bit bigger. One of my pet peeves or things that I don't think is super helpful is like these reaction videos, right? So
Right.
you'll have a creator that's basically calling out another creator, which would never happen in real life. Now, here and there, you will get these people to come together and actually come on a panel or a podcast, and they have a back and forth discussion or even a debate. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's powerful, having discussions, but having some guy on the internet be like, well, I think that so and so is wrong, or so and so, like, a lot of times becomes like mudslinging or name bashing. And there's kind of the philosophy that you could either you could have the tallest building one of two ways. You could tear down all the other buildings, or you could just build yours up. So I'm again of the belief, take the positive route.
Right.
So doing a natty or not is usually a way to like kind of bring someone else down and elevate yourself up. That's
Yeah.
or it's just for, so I think that when you start kind of doing things only for, again, we do need to get eyeballs on our space, because without the eyeballs we can't educate people. But
Mhm.
doing stuff only to get eyeballs, if you're doing stuff only for views, I have a problem for that. I also have a problem if you're going to tear someone, because I've had people, over the years say certain things about me or our gym, and it's just not very nice. And like, I'm trying to help people. So I think in general, if people are kind of coming together and they're focusing on the good, that's where I think people should pay attention. Now, if someone is cheating and someone gets called out for cheating in there, I think there's a right and a wrong way to do it. But I think making a YouTube video on someone, I just don't think that's like a very professional like thing to do. Um,
Yeah, no, I agree.
so if we want to take this industry, like you said, if we want to have more regulations and more professionalism, well, I think that we should try to, and again, I might let up a curse word here and there. I might say some things, and we're all human, but I think when you have the intent to, you need to ask yourself again, how does this help? How does this hurt? And I think if you're just kind of bringing someone down for your gain, I'm not about that. So, but that being said, if someone's cheating and if someone has evidence of someone else cheating, um, action should be taken. But I think that like making a video about them is not like the route I would personally go. So that is kind of my opinion with that. And another thing I'll just say too, because again, I hate, there are going to be some circumstances where someone is maybe not natty anymore, but it could be for a completely reasonable medical reason, especially for as people get older. If they're
Right. Yeah.
the problem is that now, like, oh well, I'm on I'm on hormone replacement therapy. Meanwhile, they're not really being honest about, they may be doing things in an unhealthy way, and that's not good either. But
Right.
I think that probably people should, again, now things are like so like out in the open. I think we should maybe be a little bit some things should be kept private or personal. And I think like what your medications are and stuff probably doesn't need to be like on the internet.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing, because I think that's gonna be, because it's now that the Pandora's box is opened with like these natty or nots and stuff, that's a whole other kind of thing, and it gets really confusing for for people like yourself. It gets really confusing, and you know, so I think when you're talking about hormones and stuff like that, especially, and for anyone that's listening that's younger, just understand that your brain is still developing until 25. You don't want to mess with, things that affect your brain, your heart, your hormones. wait till you're fully developed before you make a life altering decision, no matter for whatever that may be. And if you're in a sport that has certain rules, I think that you should abide by those rules. Pretty simple. So that's kind of, I'll leave it at that. I think that, and I think that just in general, if we could be more positive and supportive of each other versus kind of tearing people down, be professional. I think those are all good things that I would say. I think sometimes people, we need to take a step back and kind of evaluate like what's the goal here. If the goal is to help people, I think kind of coming things from a more positive place is the way to go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think we definitely need to come together as a community and try to support each other instead of trying to tear each other down, because not only will that help others get into the gym and get more healthy, get healthier, it'll help others to, find common ground with each other so that there's less fighting. They will become healthier, of course, and it will also help yourself because now people are healthier, so there's less money to be spent on health items like medicine because less people are getting sick because now they're healthier, and stuff like that. I feel like we need to come together and just be nice and help each other out and stop tearing people down. But that's all the questions I have. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, Jack. So I'm just gonna sign off, and then we'll just make sure you get all like the audio and files that you need.
Yep.
Guys, if this was helpful, please share this. I think this was a really uh insightful discussion. So I hope this project goes well for you, Jack. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.